Hi everyone, welcome to Great Books, Big Ideas. I'm Jim. This is time for another reading update. Happened to do this on Friday, so we'll call it a Friday Reads for March 28th, 2025. I finished a couple books, and then I want to update books I'm actively reading, let's say. So the first book I finished was a recent find from a library sale, and that is Reality Sandwiches by Allen Ginsberg, from the Pocket Poet series of City Lights books. And this was a good read. Didn't take me long to get through it. Ginsberg this is early 60s, and I think it's a compilation. 1963 is when copyright is, and it's a compilation of sort of like selected works from the 50s up until the point in 63 when he published it. And it's a nice sampling of his work. Allen Ginsberg, for me, is an inconsistent poet. He has landmark canonical poems like Howl, which is really a tour de force, and plenty of great poems like his Kaddish and Supermarket in California, and I really like Sunflower Sutra a lot. So a lot of his poems have entered into the canon by this point. He's a Beat Generation poet, obviously, and but he's inconsistent. So if you read a body of his work, there's going to be a lot of misses along with the hits, and that was generally the case here, although I would say there's probably more hits than misses. I'm going to give this one away. I'm going to drop it off at a little free library. It only cost me $1 at the library sale. I have a collected poems edition of Ginsberg, and I'm sure the poems in here are in that, so I'm not really losing out. Let me see if there's a poem that I can read for you. There was one here that makes reference to an awful incident in the history of the Beat Generation, and that was the accidental murder of William Burroughs' wife. And I don't know all the details of the story, but it was unfortunate, to say the least. These writers and their girlfriends and spouses and boyfriends were often high or on some kind of substance. Burroughs himself was a junkie, and what happened here was, I think it was an unfortunate game of like William Tell, like where you put the apple on someone's head and you shoot it, and this poor woman got shot by Burroughs, and the beats were not really safe for women. Let's put it that way. So let me see if I can find this poem for you, and we'll give it a reading. Okay, I found it. It's called Dream Record, June 8th, 1955, by Allen Ginsberg. I want to read it, and I'll make a couple quick comments on it. A drunken night in my house with a boy, San Francisco. I lay asleep. Darkness. I went back to Mexico City and saw Joan Burroughs leaning forward in a garden chair, arms on her knees. She studied me with clear eyes and downcast smile, her face restored to a fine beauty tequila and salt had made strange before the bullet in her brow. We talked of the life since then. Well, what's Burroughs doing now? Bill on Earth, he's in North Africa. Oh, and Kerouac? Jack still jumps with the same beat genius as before. Notebooks filled with Buddha. I hope he makes it, she laughed. Is Hunky still in the can? No, last time I saw him on Times Square. And how is Kenny? Married, drunk, and golden in the East. You? New loves in the West. Then I knew she was a dream, and questioned her. Joan, what kind of knowledge have the dead? Can you still love your mortal acquaintances? What do you remember of us? She faded in front of me. The next instant, I saw her rain-stained tombstone rear an illegible epitaph under the gnarled branch of a small tree in the wild grass of an unvisited garden in Mexico. That is an interesting poem because, number one, I give him credit for remembering Joan Burroughs, for acknowledging what happened and writing about it. And you can see it's on his conscience. And a lot of the prominent figures in the Beat generation are mentioned here. This is standard Allen Ginsberg stuff. They like to name drop one another. And but this theme about, what is remembered of us once you're departed and so forth, and the curiosity that she has for the people that she left behind. So again, I don't know all the details of that story, but it's very sordid, and it's sad. It's a sad thing that happened, and it's not the only incident like that happened to these beats. And I thought that poem stuck out for me as pretty stark. And just it's a nice variety of poems. And if you just want to sample Allen Ginsberg, books like this are good. But I would go with his collection called How and other poems. Looks very similar to this. But if you want to go a little deeper into Ginsberg and you don't want to go into any collected works or anything, something like this is good. So hopefully someone will find this and benefit from it. The other book I finished recently is The Magic of Findhorn. And this is by Paul Hawken. This was a nice discovery at the Unionville High School book sale back in February. And as I said in previous videos, I was familiar with Findhorn because it was mentioned in the film My Dinner with Andre, one of my all-time favorite films. Findhorn it still exists. I did do some deep dive research while reading the book to find what has become of Findhorn since this book was written in the 70s. It's written by Paul Hawken, who is, I also researched that author. He's actually written plenty of books, and he's kind of like he's into ecology and business, and he's active in that field. And in fact, I think he has a new book coming out called Carbon, which is about carbon. But this was an early book by him, maybe one of his first, and I thought it was good. Now, Findhorn is this place in northern Scotland, and it's on the coast. I think it's near Inverness, and this is the story of Paul Hawken, an American who travels there because he's heard interesting things about it, and he stays for a long time. And in real life, I think he stayed there for a year, and he got to know the people, the founders, and so forth. And they are profiled in this book, and he goes into their stories, which made it interesting reading. Findhorn is like one of these New Age communities. And it became notorious because they were growing all kinds of amazing flora in very harsh conditions, like on the coast, a very sandy soil. They would compost and try to help these plants, but they were growing amazing sized plants, like things blooming all the time, 40-pound cabbages, just sort of off the charts, odd things that shouldn't have been happening given the geographic location and the soil conditions of this site. They took over this, I think they call them in UK, in Scotland, a caravan park. It's like a trailer park in America. And these people kind of straggled in from different places, and it formed an identity, a sense of community. It's wrapped up with a kind of neo-Christian, New Agey type of philosophy and practice. Not a cult by any means, but definitely people, like-minded people, sort of found this through word of mouth. And he basically tells the story of all that in here. And a lot of profiles of the founders. And at different points, the book starts in a kind of skeptical frame of mind where he isn't really sure what this place is all about, but he gets won over, and the book then transforms into more of like profiles of these characters, and he tells their stories and in very creative ways. He's like very descriptive. He sort of adopts their point of view. He's quoting stuff, I'm sure, from interviews, puts that in italics, and it's an interesting weave. Very much in the spirit of what we call now creative nonfiction, and I was pretty more impressed with the writing than I thought I was going to be, and it held my interest from start to finish because the characters are so unique and interesting. So one of the founders is a guy named Peter. He served in World War II in the British Army in the Southeast Asia. It might have been Burma. He had like a lot of responsibility, but he was interested in like alternative religions and things like that. He ended up like marching or going on this long trek over the Himalayan mountains into Tibet to find a certain monastery. So he tells that story. It was really, really well described. And then there were a lot of ups and downs in this man's career when he came back. He was involved with kind of women, and eventually he and one of his, I guess they eventually married. It wasn't his first wife, maybe his second wife, but they ended up, he was in Ireland for a bit, and then he ended up back in the UK, and then he kind of straggled up to Scotland with not much money in his pocket, and they ended up kind of running a nice hotel up there and turning it near Findhorn, and they turned it into this sort of 4-star hotel. And then they lost that job, and then they ended up kind of living on government assistance in this caravan park. And then that's when things start to grow, no pun intended. And they learned all these interesting gardening and farming tactics and stuff. And then the community grew up around that. So those he and his wife are profiled, and there's a kind of a spiritual guy who's, I think his name was David. He is profiled, and different characters, so you get the idea. But it's very mystical. You have talk about people who can see fairies and the little people, and they divas and kind of spirit guides and people who can see things. And he's trying to whet your appetite for this magical place called Findhorn. So it's not going to be for everybody, but I liked it. I'm going to send this to my daughter, who works in organic agriculture and is kind of into this kind of thing, and is currently studying herbalism and getting a certificate in that. So this is right up my daughter's alley, I think. And but what has become of Findhorn? That is, as I was reading the book, I got really curious about that. So Findhorn went through some trouble. It actually sustained for decades, and then around when COVID hit, they hit hard times, and I guess you might call it going bankrupt. And one disgruntled resident who might have been made redundant, he burned down their community center and some other infrastructure there, so they saw some damage. And then out of that, if I understand this correctly, always correct me if I'm wrong about these things, because I only lightly research them. A new foundation or a new organization was formed or branched off, and those people have a website, and they have set up like a new community. I think it's on the west coast of Scotland that people can go visit and learn about agriculture and gardening, and they do like new agey kind of philosophy and guidance and things like court, probably like lectures and things like that. You can stay there. But back in the old Findhorn, like that has now become, I think, if I understand correctly, it's become kind of like a community that's self-governed. So you can still visit that. It's just not as affiliated with this original Findhorn organization. There's been some kind of separation there, but apparently a lot of people still go visit, and it's a destination for new agey people. Anyway, I learned a lot. It was cool. I don't often read about agriculture and gardening. I wish my thumb were greener. This made me want to get better at that, but I don't know if that's a lost cause. But the magic of Findhorn was a lot of fun. There's like nice illustrations at the head of every chapter. And it was fun. It was a fun ride for sure. And Paul Hawken is still active. That was the other book I finished. Moving right along. What else do we have? Well, let's talk about what I'm currently reading. Every now and then, even though I'm reading a big pile of books all at the same time, that's standard practice in Jim's world, I pick up a new one. And this was one that's been on the shelf for a long time, staring at me, and these books call out to me. And I think this called out to me because I've been doing the series of Year One Great Books of the Western World readings, and we've been reading a lot of Greek philosophers and dramatists. And this book is about a Greek philosopher. It's called The Wreckage of Agathon by John Gardner. John Gardner is a favorite author. I have not read all of his books, but the ones I've read have all been good to great. The ones I have read by him are Sunlight Dialogues, October Light, Nickel Mountain, Grendel, maybe his most famous book, his On Moral Fiction, which is a nonfiction work. And we have all his books. My wife is a huge fan of him, and I'm talking decades ago, she said, "Oh, you really should read this." And we've had it on the shelf all these years. Well, I finally got around to starting it. It's set in Sparta, and Agathon is this is a novel, obviously, and Agathon's a sort of cranky old man philosopher who's maybe senile, and he's been arrested. Lycurgus is like the ruler of Sparta, and we don't know why exactly he's been imprisoned, but along with him is like his sidekick, who is named Peeker, Peeker, and he's younger. He sort of follows him around, and he doesn't know like what he's doing there. And so there's a lot of antics between the two guys, and the chapters are written from these different points of view, like first-person narrators. So you'll switch from Agathon to Peeker. So as the story builds, you're getting like a dual perspective. And yeah, they don't really know what's going on, but they are given like, I guess you'd call it parchment or whatever they wrote on back in ancient Greek days. They're allowed to write in the prison, and then like the jailer will like take these pages, and who knows where they go. They speculate about that, but it's really fun read. It's very funny. It's very kind of like it's not historically accurate. Like it's touching on history, but it's like watching a Woody Allen film, like that's set like in ancient times, with that kind of humor, and it's It's fun. It's fun. It's captured my attention. I want to read more of it. I don't think it's going to take me long to get through it. I don't have a bookmark in here, but I think I'm about 60 pages in, and I'm on the hook. I want to see what's going on here. We're getting into a little bit of backstory, like before they were imprisoned, like, you know, what was going on in Agathon's life. And there's definitely like philosophy in here. He's sort of like a Socrates type of figure, but he's not really Socrates. Like he's got his own attitude, his own personality, but there's elements of Socrates in here. There's maybe elements of like people like Diogenes or like cynics, and you know, it seems like a sort of a composite type of thing. But yeah, it seems to me like John Gardner was having a lot of fun writing this book. I'll read the back copy and maybe it'll explain it better. Political protest is nothing new. 2,500 years ago, the philosopher Agathon, a cross between the Marx brothers and Socrates, was thrown into prison for loudly, rudely, and wisely protesting Lycurgus's fanatical policy of law and order in Sparta. In this wry, funny, and beautifully wrought novel, John Gardner creates an ancient world that is frighteningly like modern-day you-know-where the problems of who rules and how, what are the responsibilities of power, and what should its limitations be, are dissected with wisdom and brilliance. This book will make you laugh, it will make you gasp, but most of all, it will make you think. Nice blurb. Yeah, so that's it, and I can read you like some reviews. New York Times Book Review says, think of this novel as Kessler or Solzhenitsyn transposed backward in time, and you won't be far wrong. Newsweek says, two men tell the tale, Agathon the seer and his disciple Demodocus the piker. They share a rat-ridden prison cell in the ancient Sparta of the tyrant Lycurgus, from which Agathon, horny, foul-smelling, lame, mocks the world, its philosophical systems, its political vanities, and his own vital history. Their prison cell is as much a metaphor as Sartre's in No Exit, but it is more than that. It is a real place with corners, four walls, slop on the floor. It is John Gardner's gift to evoke at once substance and essence. That's Newsweek. The other touchstone I thought of was Waiting for Godot, with Gogo and Didi, and they're kind of trapped in this like space where they can't seem to get out of it. It's got that vibe too. Anyway, glad I picked it up. I'll have more to say about it when I finish it. What else am I reading? Still getting some headway through High Minds by Simon Heffer, The Victorians and the Birth of Modern Britain. There's some passages in here I might want to quote for very short videos. I'm thinking about doing a series, like a playlist series of like, call it Food for Thought, where I just read excerpts from things. Speaking of excerpts, why don't I read the beginning of The Wreckage of Agathon? Let's see if you might be interested in it. I do not know if this book is still in print. I have my doubts. But it starts with the Piker narrator, and it starts like this. What charge? Cried Agathon, rolling his eyes up, clinging to his crutch. What charge? His eyebrows were like tangled hazel and hawthorn and oak moss, a blown-down forest of silver trunks and boughs. His nose was like an avalanche. His eyes were like two caves. What charge? He cried, and banged his crutch. Master, for the love of God, I said, but he gave me a look and roared again. What charge? A question obscenely presumptuous, for he was the foulest man alive by any reasonable standard, a maker of suggestions to ugly fat old cleaning ladies, a midnight prowler in the most disgusting parts of town, the alleys of the poor, the palace gardens, who searched out visions of undressed maidens and coupling lovers, especially old ones, and lived whenever his onion patch had nothing in it but burdocks and brambles, by foraging in the garbage tubs behind houses. I have followed him for 3 years, though I speak of him with understandable detachment, and I know these things I'm telling you for facts. He was seated on a curb when they came to arrest him, cooling his great horny feet in the gutter up to the ankles in the indeterminate principle. His words, not mine. I do not overprize sewage, he sometimes defended himself when children teased him. It's smooth and cool, but also smelly. Neither do I overprize kings. And he would cackle. Occasionally people would laugh and praise him. Usually they threw stones. Either way, he was happy. He was a fool, and I was ashamed of him. He was a troublemaker. When one of the stones they threw hit me and broke my head, he would say, "Tut, tut, that's a nasty scratch." In the beginning, I used to resolve sometimes that I would murder him, but he would reason with me and twist my mind and make me believe that I ought to be proud to be seen with him. In any case, I knew that if I murdered him, I would have to go back with my mother. And that's the first paragraph of Wreckage of Agathon. All right. So back to High Minds. This is a real chunker of a book, so it's going to take me a long time to read it. But every now and then I pick it up and I read a chapter, and I'm learning a lot about the Corn Laws, the repeal of the Corn Laws. We're now learning about the Chartist movement, and I'm learning a lot. But that's all I'll say about that for now. I'm also reading. It's just a reread for me. But book 1 of the Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle, because I want to prepare my next installment in the Great Books Reading Plan Year 1. So that's up. Book 1 isn't that long, and I actually already have notes on it because I taught that text at least a couple times in college. So it's fun to revisit it. So stay tuned. I hope to be doing a video on that pretty soon. Another book I started but haven't gotten too far into yet is John Reed, 10 Days That Shook the World. This is a recent acquisition from the Unionville High School book sale. And we're learning about the Russian Revolution, the Bolshevists. And it's really cool. It's interesting. But so much other stuff is on my plate that I'm not making as much headway as I would like to. But that'll change soon. The book that I am spending the most time reading, of course, is Marcel Proust. This is the Guermantes Way, Volume 3. And this, I won't say much about it because I'll do a video on this someday when I finish it, after I finish it. But I will only say that I'm liking the translation a lot. And this book was the heaviest lift for me in my first read through of Proust, the C.K. Scott Moncrief translation. The Guermantes Way almost broke my back. There were long passages that I struggled with, and I was in and out of it and separated by long periods of time. This I'm reading about 15 to 20 pages a day on average, and I'm going to be halfway through soon. So this is going better than I thought it would, and I'm appreciating this particular volume a lot more than I did the first time through. And I know some of the best passages are coming up, but more on this later after I finish it. I'm also reading Epictetus, the Discourses. And this is not a particularly long book, but it's going slower than I thought it would. I'll explain when I review this eventually, but it's partly the way it's written. It's sort of like secondhand. It's similar to Socrates, who didn't write anything down, and we get it filtered through Plato. Well, the writings, the sayings or the teachings of Epictetus, he did not write these down. There's an intermediary here. I think that's part of the problem, but it's definitely like interesting Stoic philosophy, and I'm looking forward to finishing it, and then I'm thinking maybe in a month I'll be done, depending on my pace, and I'll give a more like lengthy review. But it's not as easy as I thought. It's not as easy as reading Marcus Aurelius. Like that. That's what I think my expectations were. It was going to be a little bit more like that, but it's a little bit harder to follow. And last but not least, I guess I'll mention this one. This is a book that was tabled for quite a while. I was reading it about a year ago, and then set it aside. But it's Lewis Mumford, American polymath. Really, he wrote in a lot of different genres. He did literary criticism. He talked a lot about architecture and communities and modern life. And this is a major work by him, The Myth of the Machine, The Pentagon of Power. And this was like part of his series of studies that began with the publication of Techniques and Civilization in 1934. And this came out, I think, around 1970. And this is deep stuff. Not the easiest reading, but I just got finished with a chapter where he's been talking about Galileo and really like the role of scientific thinking, and like he's talking a lot about the machine, like the machine mindset, and how that has now become like the sort of dominant paradigm. And yeah, it's very deep. It's very rich. I can't get through it. Like, I can't speed read it at all. He's a very fine writer, but he's kind of dense. And every sentence is impactful if you pay attention to it. If you don't pay attention to it, it feels a little bit dull. So it's a challenge that way. The current chapter I'm reading now is going into Descartes and talking about his philosophy, discourse on method, and all that. But yeah, it's nice to come back to this, but it is daunting. I think it's going to take me a while to like slow walk through this, but it's nice to revisit it. All right, those are books that I've been reading. What have you guys been reading? And have you finished anything lately? How's your reading life going these days as we get into spring? If you're watching this in real time. And I hope you enjoyed this update. If you have comments on the books, let me know. Just to review what we've talked about. We've got The Myth of the Machine by Lewis Mumford. The Discourses of Epictetus. The Guermantes Way by Marcel Proust. 10 Days That Shook the World by John Reed. The Wreckage of Agathon, a new entry on the active reading list. Also, Nicomachean Ethics, Book 1. Simon Heffer, High Minds. And the books I did complete, The Magic of Findhorn by Paul Hawken and Reality Sandwiches by Allen Ginsberg. Reading is going pretty well. I have actually been not reading as much as I would like to, because the last, I'd say, month and a half, I've been very busy, not only with my online teaching duties, which has been kind of stable. It's not like more than usual. It's just pretty steady. But I had to do like 10 articles for my freelance writing work. And I had to complete those in like 2 months or less than 2 months. And I've just finished those. They've all been approved. And yeah, it's a nice, you got to take the work when it comes, at least in my world. It's hard to say no. And yeah, but I'm glad I'm through this patch. And hopefully I can get maybe a week or two off before the next assignment until I start worrying, are they going to assign me more? But you know, that's the life of a freelancer. But I've been busy with that. It's been occupying a lot of time. The dog, too, he's basically gone almost completely blind. He's 14. He turned 14 in March. He's right here by my side. He requires a lot of elder care because he bumps into things, and he's it's a safety issue. I think in other respects he's very healthy for a 14-year-old dog, but the eyesight is really gone, and so we have to really change our habits and be very vigilant with him. And we're just trying to make life comfortable for him because he gives us so much too. And so that's sometimes saps away from my reading time. Although if I'm just kind of lying on the sofa with him, that's where he's more comfortable, I can get a lot of reading done. So it cuts two ways there. Anyway, that is my update. Thanks for bearing with me. I wish I could make these shorter, but I have a tendency to ramble, can't you tell? You can always play me back at double speed or just hop around. I'm sure people do that. But I really appreciate you watching. And again, it's always fun to hear what you're reading and any reactions that you have to the books that I've been reading. So stay tuned. I'll be back with another update, hopefully in another week or two. I will say so long for now. Bye-bye.